30 minutes, right?
If that.
Mike's our
Not
hub.
more.
Nope, we'll cut it short at 30.
How come you have no picture?
I don't know. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hubitat Live. I'm Patrick Stuart. With me tonight are Bruce Ravenel and Mike Maxwell. Say hi guys, how's everything going? There's Bruce.
Oh, good. Everything's great.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of different tonight. This is episode 7. It is live. That's why we call it Hubitat Live. The YouTube chat is the place to ask any kind of questions at any time. We're going to take a lot of time tonight to probably talk, hopefully answer those questions. But tonight's show, it's all about back to the basics. We figured we'd start back with some helpful information for those that are just getting started, and then also an extended Q&A. So without further ado, I figure, we'd start with probably what is the single biggest confusion I've seen. Home automation is not easy by any means, right? It's complex. And we give you that blank slate that you can build pretty much anything. But of course, we don't sell devices. You've got to go out and get those devices. And a lot of people who are new to home automation, or even those that aren't, are totally confused by all the different terms that are out there. Z-Wave, ZigBee, Lutron, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all these different terms. So we figured we'd take the two most popular things that are out there that we support, which are ZigBee and Z-Wave, and kind of break down how they're different than traditional networks and why it's important to plan out your network or at least strengthen your network. So Mike, hey, you're kind of our resident ZigBee and Z-Wave expert. Would you mind just explaining how a mesh network works?
Yeah, so mesh networks, and this is true of both ZigBee and Z-Wave, basically with specific types of devices that we call repeaters, they are capable of storing and forwarding messages that they get from other devices. So this isn't like your typical Wi-Fi network where you have a single access point and, once you get out of range with that specific signal, you're basically toast. With mesh networks, they have the capability of bouncing messages off to each other to get to a battery-powered device or something that's further away than the typical range would allow the device to reach on its own.
So the gist of it is, because I've seen a few questions that have come in recently, like what is the range of the hub? And really the range of the hub isn't really the issue. And so that leads me to believe that a lot of people really don't understand that the more devices you have, potentially the better the mesh is, with one caveat, right? Powered devices typically are repeaters. And the role of repeaters is is that the power device repeats and essentially sends those signals out to the end devices. So think of it like a spider web, right? A spider web would never stand on its own if all it was just an outside ring with a whole bunch of just direct connections to the center. We've got to build connections in between everything, and the stronger the web or the mesh in our situation, the better off you're going to be. And so I know there's some limitations, Mike, and Bruce, you know this too. Is we'll talk about ZigBee to begin with. So ZigBee is one of those really robust networking protocols. It's in the same spectrum as Wi-Fi, but it's a low power network, and it uses packets to send back and forth, but each hop is a repeater. And so the more repeaters that you have in a ZigBee mesh network, the stronger the signal will be coming from an end device back to the hub. Now, a repeater can also be an end device. So if you've got a dimmer or a switch that's ZigBee, that's powered, that's most likely going to also repeat the signals. One of those odd exceptions that some people get hung up on are some light bulbs, right? Mike, do you want to talk about maybe some of the differences between ZigBee home automation protocol and the other protocol that a lot of people use, which is ZigBee Lightlink?
Well, yeah. The bulbs typically, not all bulbs, but most bulbs are set up to just pass commands that bulbs would use. color commands and level commands. So while quite a few ZigBee bulbs actually are repeaters, they typically don't do a very good job of it once you get to a certain, I'm not going to say we even know what the number is, but once you get to a certain number of devices, ZigBee devices on your network, they have a tendency to drop messages and not pass them through. So bulbs, that's why ZigBee bulbs in particular have kind of gotten a bad rap for it. There's one brand that explicitly doesn't repeat ZigBee signals, and it's guaranteed not to cause you any issues on your network, and those are Singlids. But most other bulbs at one point in time are going to cause issues either with a device joining and not working properly that way, or the device will join and then all of a sudden it'll drop off the network and go MIA on you. So line-powered devices, dimmers, switches, and this is true of both ZigBee and Z-Wave, dimmers and switches, anything that's powered from 120 volts AC is generally going to be a repeater.
Plug-in outlets. Plug-in switch.
Plug-in outlets. No battery devices are repeaters. Locks are not repeaters. Secure devices aren't going to make good repeaters. Garage door openers, even though they're line powered, they're not going to help you out.
So let's briefly talk about the difference between ZigBee Lightlink, which there's a lot of products that are coming to market using the ZigBee Lightlink protocol that are not ZigBee 3 yet, and there's a little confusion around that. So that, maybe we'll talk about that.
Lightlink basically is just a protocol that allows two devices to directly communicate with each other. They don't require a coordinator. They don't require a hub. It looks like magic, and you have this little whiz-bang $5 switch from IKEA, and you can control their $10 outlet with it without a hub or a switch or anything else. And similarly, bulbs support that as well. As far as Hubitat's concerned, we don't really care. We'll work with either of them.
Well, but little clarification there. We don't actually work directly with a Lightlink bulb. They fall back to ZigBee Home Automation Protocol, which is what we connect to.
Actually, there's really no fallback. Lightlink itself is a tighter spec that rides on top of ZHA.
Okay.
They work the same way. They have ZHA has a subset of the commands that are available in Lightlink or in ZLL, in the ZLL spec. But basically, ZLL's just got more attributes that are required as part of a given class, color class or whatever. Okay. So that's really the only difference that I've seen, Patrick. I mean, the hub they don't fall back. They don't do anything any differently. Since ZHA is actually a subset of ZLL, they don't really care.
Right. So but just to recap here, so a ZLL bulb is going to talk to something else directly. There's no hub involved. ZigBee Home Automation.
It's the Lightlink part of it.
Yeah.
Lightlink is, that's the part that allows two ZigBee devices to pair to each other and talk directly to each other without going through a coordinator.
Gotcha. So
it's also, if anybody's tried it, it's also quite a pain in the ass because, you have to do a, specific, set of gymnastics on a button controller to get it to pair to a device because you don't have a central place where you can do discovery. And so, while it works and you don't need a hub to do it, it's not the easiest thing to set up, and even worse to take apart.
So, Mike, besides range, obviously the range between the repeater and the hub, or the endpoint device and a repeater or the hub, are there any other limitations that ZigBee has when it comes to setting up a mesh network?
I don't know what the total hop count is. I think in Z-Wave it's limited to 4. I don't think ZigBee has that limitation, which is why they use it in industrial.
Okay. Well, you brought up Z-Wave, so that's a perfect segue. So Z-Wave functions very similar to ZigBee. It uses a different frequency than ZigBee, which is its own. What is that? Is it 900 megahertz or?
Yeah.
And
it's in the 800-900 depending on where you're at in the world.
Yeah, that's another point. That's a good point. Bruce, you're actually far more versed in the different regions of Z-Wave. But how many regions are there out there?
There's a total of about 10. There are three main ones, which are Europe, U.S., and Australia, New Zealand. We only supply those three. There's a bunch of odd ones. The real issue isn't so much the Z-Wave frequency that the hub supports as it is the devices you buy and what can you find for sale that you could buy to put in your house. So we see people in Israel has its own region, is its own Z-Wave region, but customers in Israel buy a European hub from us for the obvious reason they can get devices from Europe that would work.
And that's a key point, is you have to match the Z-Wave region for the hub. You can't use a US ZigBee device on a European Z-Wave frequency. So
that's correct. And you can only have one Z-Wave radio per hub. So you can't have like two different frequency. Oh, great, I'll run US and Europe at the same time. You can't do that. You could have two hubs.
Right.
One that they could be joined together through Hub Connect or Hub Link to do that. But each hub can only have one Z-Wave frequency. And of course, ZigBee is one frequency worldwide.
Yeah.
So, which kind of pisses me off that there's not more ZigBee devices, given the fact that a manufacturer only has to carry one SKU.
That's right.
Instead of 10. But what do I know?
Well, perfect. I think we've kind of nailed that. So hopefully people have a better understanding of ZigBee and Z-Wave, why it matters. One of the things that I've kind of come up with, I haven't really seen this anywhere else, but I kind of use it as a good measure of a strong network, especially with ZigBee, but it probably also applies with Z-Wave, is there's a certain limitation in repeaters on ZigBee that they can only control about 6 endpoint devices. Some can control more, but 6 is a good number. So when you think about it, a lot of people approach home automation like, hey, if I just put a sensor everywhere around my house and I put a hub in the center of the house, I'm good. But there's the problem, is you can't just have all those sensors. Again, remember the spider web. You want to put those repeaters in between those so that you can communicate back and forth. And so I've come up with just kind of a safe ratio for a strong mesh network. And that's about for every 6 battery-powered devices, you want at least one repeater that's within the line of sight or the distance between the hub and those devices from that side of things. So sometimes it's just helpful to just get a floor plan or just a crude, back and napkin, draw it out and just do the math, because line of sight, no interruptions, you could probably go, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 feet, in the ideal conditions from hub to device. But you throw a couple walls in there, you throw a couple, various other things that are out there, your range is going to be limited. And so those repeaters are just going to make that network that much stronger.
There's one other thing that I when I was on a different platform, I didn't believe this, but because it was totally contrary to what, common knowledge was at the time. But I can't stress strongly enough that if you can't, and this is true for every device except a secure device. So when we talk only Z-Wave secure devices. So when we talk about a Z-Wave lock or a Z-Wave garage door controller, that's not part of this conversation. Every other device, if you cannot pair it in place, meaning, if you're having to carry the hub around in order to pair your devices, you don't have enough repeaters. Pure and simple, you don't have enough of them, or they're not in the right place, they're not the right kind.
And you bring up a good point.
If you can't pair, I can't stress this enough, if you can't pair in place, you might actually get the device paired, but I guarantee you when you put it in its final destination, tomorrow it's not going to work. So the bottom line is pair in place, then you don't have to do as many Z-Wave repairs, you don't have to worry about the ZigBee mesh settling down because the device picked the parent that it wants right from where it was.
Yeah.
When you convert over to Hubitat from another Z-Wave system, you should always pair the devices closest to the hub first and work your way out, sort of in a spiral, working your way out so that you're building the mesh as you go. There are a couple of really good articles that are in the community and in our documentation about how to build a good Z-Wave mesh, how to build a good ZigBee mesh. And those articles go into some detail about these points and how to go about making sure you have a good mesh and how to not try to do everything all at once. Do some, let it settle, do some more, do some repairs, etc. It's not something you want to just go hit at with a hammer and expect that it's going to all work really well at first. It takes a little time and effort.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bruce, because some people will start their conversion, they've got 50, 100 devices, and we'd love to get those devices working. But like you said, if you take a hammer to it, try to do it all in a couple hours, you're going to be using that hammer against some hard objects. So
yeah, and even if you do understand the whole, the issue with repeaters, the bottom line is unless you buy more repeaters when you're making a migration from one system to the other, you're going to break something. Right? Because the things that you need to deploy first if you migrate over to Hubitat are the repeaters.
Yeah.
As soon as you take them off the other system, it's not gonna go well with the other setup.
Right. And
vice versa. So
right,
yes.
Yeah. And we've seen some hubs we won't mention that stay in pairing mode. So it's always good practice when you're moving from another system to disconnect that system when you're pairing up the device.
Turn it off.
Right. Turn it off. Disconnect it.
Turn it off. At least while you're doing the
right.
migration and doing the pairing.
Yeah.
Turn off the SmartThings hub because it will interfere with pairing.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention, when a device is in pairing mode, it's in high power mode. So it's going to be more likely to pair. But once it settles down, it drops into low power mode. And if it can't talk reliably to its pair, or to its parent, I should say, then that's where people start to have problems. So it might pair, but it won't necessarily communicate. And again, that's a typical indication of not enough repeaters. So I think we've beaten that message across. But this is probably the number one issue we see with people who are taking their devices and trying to build a solid network is they don't understand that repeaters are the key to success for both ZigBee and Z-Wave networks. All right.
So Patrick, I've got one more little thing to add about this. AOTech makes a nice little Z-Wave plug-in repeater that plugs into a wall outlet.
Yes.
It's a little square thing. It's not very big, about 1.5 inches in diameter, 1/2 inch thick. Those work really well, and they really help create a solid Z-Wave mesh. Especially if, for example, you have a room that's somewhat isolated from the rest of your mesh, and if you can stick one of those guys along the way to it, it will help get the mesh extended to that area. When I moved my Z-Wave network, which is about 70 devices, the very first thing I did was put 4 of those guys into Hubitat, sort of strategically located, each about maybe 20 feet from the hub. They paired right up. I had no issue at all getting them paired. So I had those sort of as a beginning backbone to help me migrate the other devices and get them to pair. Later, after the mesh was fully up and was very stable, I was actually able to remove every single one of those, and my mesh works quite well without them.
Oh, wow.
But they're good. They're great little things. If you don't have a dense enough mesh, add a couple of those guys.
And they were fairly inexpensive. I picked up a couple on Prime Day, but they're not terribly expensive, but they do work very well.
The other nice thing about them too is I believe that they have a place for the screw cover to you can actually secure them in place so that they can't be removed.
They have a screw hole so you can screw the screw cover through it. Where the outlet is plugged into.
Yeah. So
which brings me up to my last point. The only issue that you'll find with appliance module repeaters of any variety is the teenager is going to move them around the room. She's going to unplug them and stick them underneath her freaking bed, right? The wife isn't going to like it where it is, and she's going to move it to where she wants the Christmas tree actually to be this year. And all of that is going to be very disruptive to your network. So just keep those kind of things in mind. You don't want to move these around, once you get your stuff set up.
Yeah.
I put Hubitat in my daughter's house, and there's exactly this phenomena because there's one of those sitting just inside her bedroom. And sure enough, for Christmas, she moved it to plug the Christmas tree into, and then wondered why her bathrooms quit working.
All right, I want to segue real quick into another common new user issue, and there's a little bit of confusion around this. It's the difference between hub security and portal and app logins, and I just want to spend a few minutes talking about this, and then we'll get to some questions and answers because this is a very common confusion point. So I'm gonna switch over to portal, and portal's where you've logged in and registered your hub. Now, it's not necessary to register your hub. So we've changed a few things. So if you were an early adopter with Hubitat, first of all, thank you. But second of all, you'll remember the old portal required you to log in first. Now you don't even have to log in. So you'll notice I'm not even logged into portal here, and I can click Find Hubs. And of course, I have quite a few hubs. And when I go, I'm going to go to the Hubitat Live Hub here real quick, and I'm going to see my Hubitat Live Hub. Now, I'm registered, but I don't remember what email I used to register it. And so that's part of the challenge here is we've added in the latest version a new card here in settings called Hub Registration. So if you click on that, you will actually get who the registered email is. Now, there's one thing that seems to be tripping up a lot of people. When you log into Portal, the email address is case sensitive. So when I go to click Login, I need to be able to type that email exactly how I see it. Of course, we leave you a note here, but it's probably not big enough, so we might need to change that. But I'm going to go ahead and, if I log in, then I get my hubs and everything. But if you can't remember what email you used or what users are logged in, that's a great new feature. That's now in 2.1.3 that was introduced. So all you need to do is go to Settings and Hub Registration. If your hub isn't registered, this is where you can actually click on a link to take you to Portal, create an account, log in, and assign that hub to your account. So let's talk about, so we understand, hopefully you understand Portal, but what I want to do is talk to you about the other part of the hub, which is security. So how do your hub is on your local network. And so some people, especially those of us with teenagers, might want to secure the hub from prying eyes. So in setting, there's hub login security. So what you can do here is you can simply add a user, you give it a username, a password, and a recovery email. So if you forget, we can actually connect that. And so you can give this any username, you add this, and now every time you go to access your local hub, you'll need to put these credentials in. That is completely different than the portal or the mobile access users to log in and remotely access your dashboards, do presence, that type of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just log in real quickly here on my other account. And now you'll see a new option that says My Hubs. And so this will actually show you the hubs that this email is attached to. And so I'll show you my home hub here. And you can see that I actually have multiple users attached here. So if you need to assign another user here, all you need to do is click on that hub, type in the email address of the user. Of course, they have to already be created. And once you type in that email, or you can add them if the user exists, and they'll automatically be added as a guest. A guest basically just has access to that hub from the mobile app. Admins can add users and subtract users from that side of things. So there's a couple other cool things that have been added recently to Portal. One is the ability to access your dashboards specifically. So the cloud menu and the local menu is right here. And then under advanced, we added another feature because this is all about getting started. And I am surprised at how many people have typed in their credentials into that hub security and then forgot it, and then even forgot the email and all that fun stuff. So we've added two options here. One is the option to hide this hub from the list of your hubs. So if you've got a hub that's showing up that you don't want to have anymore, you can just hide it right here. You can also unhide it. The second thing is we actually now have the ability that if you're securely logged into the portal, you can actually disable the hub login screen. And this is only available for admins. And so you can disable that. That'll turn off the hub login screen as long as your hub is online. Again, like I said, it's just surprising to me how many people have forgotten those credentials. We did have one incident where, and I hope I won't name names, but we had somebody whose wife actually created a secure hub and didn't tell their husband. And of course, the husband opened up a ticket and said, "I can't access my hub. It's logged in, what have you." And so by the time we got in there, it turned out somebody else in your network. So if you are on a shared network, especially with teenagers or what have you, and you want to secure that, you can do that. So hopefully that clarifies the hub login, how portal works, the registration. Of course, if you were one of our early adopters and you had a social media account, I know we've talked about this on previous shows. So that's if you clicked on the login with my Google account, or what do we have? Facebook at one point, Amazon I think was another. If you used any of those social media accounts to create a login, in order to use Portal now, you do need to migrate that social media account. So all you got to do is click on migrate from the login page. Type in that email address that was used for that social media account, so the account you used to log into Facebook or your Google account or what have you. Type that in, click migrate, you'll get a code. Once you get that code, type in the email address again, type the code in, submit the code. You will get a temporary password that you'll be able to log into, and then once you've logged in, you'll just need to change that password and you'll be good to go. So hopefully that clarifies a lot of that. We've actually talked a lot about Z-Wave tonight in ZigBee, but let's go ahead and switch gears and let's do some questions here. I know there's been a few questions. Whoops, clicked on that too many times. So let's go back to the beginning here, and the first question that's out there is from Diego Candera. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, by the way. He's asking how I can connect other hub with Hubitat Elevation. So there is a built-in app. There's also a great community app called Hub Connect. So there's a couple different options there, and they're pretty self-explanatory. There's some good documentation on the website, on our docs page for HubLink, and how to utilize that. But basically, it creates virtual devices on your main hub that is from the second hub. That's pretty much it, and then you can use them like they were real devices on that main hub. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. Joel D has a question about. He says, "Love the support on the forums. Really enjoyed getting my hub up and running. Please support LFX LAN groups when you can." Yeah, LFX is on our list. We've got a long list of devices we want to support. So hopefully we'll be able to get that going. He also asked, and Mike, maybe you got an answer for this. Any update on the timing of 3A dimmer switch official support? Says he sent a sample. Dimmers don't seem to work at present, just on and off.
Oh, hang on. What's this?
I don't know. You got to put it in front of the camera. Oh!
So this is, I apologize. I don't remember the name of the community member that sent me this thing. But I do have your packing info, so I can send it back. Yeah, I just started looking at this today, and the vendor from 3A Smart Home or whatever, he actually is boxed up some stuff, and I got an email from him this morning with a tracking number. So he didn't disclose what he was selling or what he was going to be sending me, but basically I told him, if you want your stuff supported, send me whatever it is you want supported. So it'll be a little bit of a Christmas present, but for you guys down under, we'll get you sorted out here pretty soon. I'm actually hoping to get this dimmer panel that I just showed you, which is a single gang dimmer panel. I'm hoping to get a driver for that out in the next release in 2.14. We'll see. I just started playing with this thing about 2 hours ago.
So there's a couple questions on Z-Wave S2 security. Just because we spent so much time on Z-Wave, I'm gonna probably save that for another date. We do not currently support Z-Wave S2 security. All hubs or all devices will fall back to S0. So, or most of them do. There's a couple that actually don't, I think.
Yeah, they're supposed to, but
they're supposed to. Yeah.
Ring seems to have gotten around that.
I don't know. But we hope to have some news around some developments on S2 in the future. But we're not prepared to talk about any of that tonight. So let's. We're coming up on about another minute left. So I know there's a lot of questions out here. I know, Wade, you asked a question if you could explain the virtual thermostat and the basics of how to integrate that with your stat. Well, depending on what your thermostat is, we probably have an integration with it, so you wouldn't need a virtual thermostat. But a virtual thermostat is a good placeholder if you want to kind of manually automate some stuff. So if you've got some relays or various other things, you could use a virtual thermostat. You know, if you could pull a temperature sensor, you could use Rule Machine or something else to update the virtual thermostat as a virtual driver. But it's kind of complex. Maybe we'll do that on another show. We'll talk about how all the different creative ways you could use a virtual thermostat driver. And I think a lot of the Lutron questions got answered, but Lutron does have a 75 device limit for the SmartBridge Pro, and you do need a SmartBridge Pro with Hubitat or any of the Radio Raw 2 stuff. Let's see if we got any other questions we can answer here. You know, I think, there's one other question. We'll wrap this up here with the last question from Leo's Text and Lifestyle. He said, asking a question, will you be supporting OTA updates for ZigBee and Z-Wave devices? Mike, I'm going to leave that with you, and then we're going to wrap up on that question. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have an ETA. We never give ETAs, but we do certainly have a plan to support OTA updates. Now, because we don't manufacture any of these devices, it's up to the manufacturer to give us firmware updates. But you know, frankly, I adopt the policy of if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. So firmware updates, you know, are only necessary if it's if there's something broken. Right?
I'm going to give you my take on this. Okay, if I buy a device that will not work without a firmware update, I'm never buying another one of those again. Okay, because if these guys can't figure out how to do the basics in firmware right out of the box, then as far as I'm concerned, you know, they're a little bit on the monkeyish side, and I'm not going to buy any more stuff from them. So I know people make mistakes. I know there's issues. I know there's feature enhancements, but to be honest with you, you know, I've not had to do firmware updates on any devices that I've bought. Maybe they're out there, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But for the basic stuff, that's just my take on it. I know I'm a hard ass, but too bad.
No, I'm right there with you. I have not done a single firmware update on a device. I just kind of live with it. They tend to be more painful than it's worth if it goes wrong, you know. And again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So with that said, I know there's a lot more questions. I'm going to try to take some time. I know, Bruce, thank you I know you've been responding to some folks in the live chat on the YouTube side of things. We'll try to answer any other questions that you have. Feel free to post them. And obviously, I just want to say thank you again for joining us on this episode of Hubitat Live. Please join us again in about 2 weeks from tonight, as we'll do another one of these. So we'll just, you know, we'll try a different format. So if you like tonight's show, give us some, like us, subscribe to us, do all that fun stuff that, you know, everybody talks about, like down at the bottom or whatever it is. But as always, you can join us in our community at community.hubitat.com or our official Facebook group. Again, thanks to Bruce and Mike for joining us, and for those behind the scenes to help make this live production happen. And if you want to be a guest on Hubitat Live, drop me a note in the community or email me at patrick@hubitat.com. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.